evening, everybody. Everyone that's joining us for our next PSP Roundtable. We know it's recruitment season, and there's been a lot of questions about, recruitment themes and making T-shirts and how do we do branding and marketing for our recruitment event. So we're very excited to have another roundtable tonight talking about this within the recruitment context. So I'm joined by an awesome panel of experts within our brotherhood. So we're very happy, one, as a brotherhood, to be able to use the resources of our brothers and bring their skills to the table. So we'll let everyone kind of introduce themselves. My name is Chris McCoy. I currently serve as the Vice President of Membership Development on the National Council for Phi Sigma Pi. Within my role, I kind of oversee a lot of the strategic initiatives regarding to the recruitment and the education of our members. So with that, I'll go and let the rest of our panel introduce themselves to you.
Hi everyone. A lot of you probably know me already because I'm your chapter consultant, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jen. I'm a brother of Gamma Pi chapter, which is at Towson University in Maryland, but I'm also a member of, or a person on national staff. So basically my job is to work with you guys, the brothers, on everything from risk management to recruitment. And recruitment is something that's particularly close to my heart, and branding especially, because I did study mass communication at Towson. So I'm really honored to be able to hang out with you guys tonight. I hope you're all hunkering down in the snow in the Northeast and being safe about it. So thanks for having me, Chris. And next to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amanda Earnest. I'm actually a member or alum of Gamma Beta chapter at Morehead State University, and Chris is big. But I also have about 10 plus years with branding in higher education. But also in that interim, I've also been able to work with some companies and working about how strict rules can be, but how you can get away with certain things. So we're going to try to discuss that tonight.
Great. So we do have some questions that's already prepared that we'll kind of discuss within our panel, but we definitely want you to be involved as well and bring your questions and comments. So if you're on Twitter, you can use the hashtag PSP Roundtable and send us your questions that way. Jen's going to be our Twitter checker, so she'll be jumping in throughout with some questions that we have that we can discuss. And we definitely encourage you to keep the conversation going on Twitter as well. So even after tonight, you can do that. This broadcast, as well as we are recording it, and it will be available on our YouTube channel for Phi Sigma Pi. So if you missed it, or maybe your PR chair wasn't able to jump in, you can share this video with your chapter, and then you also can continue to use the hashtag and continue that conversation. If you're joining us on Google Plus on our page, if you want to ask a question, there's a functionality within the question and answer app within this that you can actually jump online and actually ask a question as well. So really excited. So we're going to kind of jump right in a very baseline way. So tonight we're going to be talking about branding and communication. A lot of that's going to come into the context of recruitment T-shirts. That's been a very popular one if you're on like PSP Chapter Talk or the Chapter Bazaar. Chapters love selling T-shirts. We love making them. It's a great way to get the Phi Sigma Pi name out on our campus. But what comes with that is some rules that we need to follow as well. So we really want to focus on best practices and give you some examples of some do's and don'ts that you can take. So the first thing we're going to look at is what exactly does our national constitution say, right? So we have the National Constitution, which is one of our governing documents that sets forth a lot of our rules and regulations. So when we talk about the National Constitution, you're really going to be looking at Article 21. That's the jewelry, insignia, and the ritual. Within Section 2, it talks about the insignia, and any mark that's owned by Phi Sigma Pi can be used by a member without the permission of the fraternity, provided that it does not conflict with the purposes of the image of Phi Sigma Pi. So basically what that means is some of our images, like the coat of arms, that's free for you to use, provided that we don't ask you that you're going to use it in a way that really conflicts with the purpose or the mission or our values of Phi Sigma Pi. So at any time, the permission can be revoked, and that's another part of that constitutional section to know that at any time the fraternity, we can come to you and ask you kindly not to be using the fraternity's marks on certain things if it's going to conflict with the nature. So that's kind of what the National Constitution says. So we're going to look at what are the Phi Sigma Pi trademarks. So I'll kind of open it up to the panel, like what are some things within Phi Sigma Pi that we would probably assume and associate as a trademarked image within the fraternity?
Didn't want to answer if Amanda was going to answer first, but it's one I get a lot is letters. You know, we use letters, and especially a lot of chapters know that, you know, usually initiates will not most likely be able to use letters until they become brothers, but, you know, the letters, the actual words Phi Sigma Pi and Phi Sigma Pi National Honor Fraternity are all branded terms, as well as the logo, our coat of arms, and our seal as well.
Exactly. So when we're talking about, you know, that National Constitution section that I just covered about the marks and insignias of the fraternity, you know, things we're really looking at is the name Phi Sigma Pi National Honor Fraternity, a deviation of the name Phi Sigma Pi, the letters within the Greek font, so the Greek letters of Phi Sigma Pi, the coat of arms, and the seal. Amanda, if you could explain to everyone on the panel just a little bit and give us a little bit of information on what exactly does a copyright mean?
Well, basically means whether it's a company or a person solely can protect their artwork or their phrasing, their logos, trademarks, any of that is protected. So therefore, if someone infringes upon that right, they have the right to go against and try to not basically sue you to get to that point, but claim damage, that you have used their imagery, used their phrasing, used their brand without their permission. So it's always good to obtain permission, because most of the time if you try to get permission ahead, they're going to be like, yeah, sure, just don't do this and this, because usually along with trademarks and brands and logos, there's a certain set of like how they're supposed to appear when they're in all black and white, when they're in color. So therefore, they're protecting that visual identity and that brand. So therefore, it's better to obtain permission than end up in a legal suit. So.
Awesome. I think, you know, sometimes as student leaders we kind of follow. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission sometimes, and copywriting and branding is exactly one of those that you do not want to follow that ideal, that you definitely want to ask for permission and not be asking for forgiveness sometimes. So when Amanda's talking about copywriting and brand, Amanda, your background, you do graphic design. I can only imagine that you probably spend a lot of time making the images that you do.
Yes, and especially when it comes to merchandising, especially because I have more experience with higher ed. The higher ed institutions want to protect, again, because sometimes they have an agreement where when a logo is printed on a shirt or such and they sell it, they're able to get that funding back for scholarship funds. Kind of same way with companies. It also gives companies the ability to sell their logo or brand on a merchandise with their permission. So again, we'll probably get into that later. You just got to be careful when it comes, because most universities, you could probably get your hand slapped if you use the logo without permission or use it in an incorrect way. But when you start using more of companies and movie pictures and that kind of artwork and legality, that's where you might want to tread lightly.
I can tell you that the one thing I have seen recently, I've had a couple chapters reach out to me asking that the company that they're working with on T-shirts is asking for permission from us, from the national organization, as to whether or not we are providing the use of our logos. And actually just had this question last week, and basically we'll be more than happy to give it to you. As Chris was saying, you just have to be able to prove or tell us that you're going to use it properly.
Yeah, definitely, and I think Jim makes a great point. I think as an organization, we're kind of unique that we freely give our images. I know there's other Greek organizations that have rules for their membership that says, if you're going to use our image, you can only use certain official Greek licensed vendors. So you might see that logo. It's kind of like a Greek column with a reef around it. That shows that vendor is licensed within a lot of the Greek organizations to use. Some organizations have very strict branding and styling rules about, you can only use this certain logo in this certain way. So as an organization, we are very good about letting our brothers use that. We're all about providing those resources. So again, feel free to use those images. All we're going to ask for you to do is kind of just give us the proof of it. So when we say proof, it's kind of like that mock drawing of what that's going to look like, just so that way we can protect it. A lot of times for recruitment, T-shirts is always a big thing. I know that was something I was always excited about as undergrad, and I still get excited about Phi Sigma Pi T-shirts, what those are. And you can say a lot with a T-shirt, right? I think a lot of times just wearing a T-shirt almost speaks louder than what we might say. So the question I would offer, if you both could kind of give your advice on, how does our shirts that we make, how could that represent our organization as a whole?
I can give a perfect example from probably one of the first conversations I had on an on-site with a chapter last fall, so 2013. Had a question. The chapter was really excited about a T-shirt, and most of you have probably seen it. It says on the front, "Got sex," and on the back it says, "Well, we have both." Haha, so funny, because we're co-ed, well, gender inclusive. And it's interesting because I had to sit down and have a conversation with this chapter because it's very frequently pinned, very frequently forwarded. It's really popular among social media, and a lot of chapters tend to pass it on because it's funny. It's a play on words because we are gender inclusive and we are very accepting of all different types of people, all different types of backgrounds. And the reality with it is that we really get into reputational risk management. And you guys are representing yourselves as a whole myriad of different things. Saying "got sex, we have both" could really confuse an individual. We had universities reaching out to the chapters and other students reaching out to the chapters saying, "We don't understand. What are you guys saying?" And so these messages that you're sending on your shirts and in your publicity for recruitment really speak volumes. That's only a couple words, but it spoke really, really big words to the people on those campuses. So be really careful of what you say because it hits home.
I'm going to add on to what Jen is saying. So that's a great. We're talking about this brand, and and Phi Sigma Pi wants to be sure they represent the organization in good, positive terms. So even though you think, oh, I'm just slapping on the logo, whether it's Phi Sigma Pi or a movie logo or university logo, but if you say something like "got sex," that's not professional. And so therefore, that's why these companies and these organizations want to protect their brand, because basically you're saying they're endorsing that. And that's where they get mad, because they're like, "No, we didn't endorse that. We didn't sign any contracts. We're saying "got sex." I don't think that's really, So that's where you get into that, again, that legal suit. So I'm going to bring up an example. This is hard to kind of describe because it's a logo used by TNT a while back. Hopefully y'all can see it on here. TNT used this logo. Let's see here if I can do this backwards. Here we go. Anyway, TNT had a logo just like this. Basically said on the back, you may have seen this on TV, the same circle logo, and it said on the back, "We got drama." Well, this chapter got really creative, even though it's an awesome idea. Ready to move up some? Awesome. Okay. Again, we know drama. I don't know this. Again, this is a T-shirt that I got from another chapter. I don't know who that was. But again, you've got to be careful because that is a TNT, of course, a big national broadcasting company. They basically altered that logo. And TNT can really come in and say, "We're going to sue you for everything we got, everything you got, because you used our logo without our permission and you even altered it." So when it comes to recruitment T-shirts, you do want to, like, of course, Harry Potter or any of those popular movie themes, TV channels. It's better to use it as an inspiration, whether it's a font designed by a freelancer or creating your own artwork or own phrases. And if you still feel, if you got a funny feeling in your gut, like, okay, I'm using this logo, but I feel really funny, usually your gut's going to be right. But if you just have, use some inspiration or some element, put on the T-shirt somewhere, property is protected, or our property belongs to Walt Disney, TNT, whatever. So therefore, they know you're drawing inspiration from that, but you're not claiming, hey, I'm using your artwork to promote my organization without your permission.
Yeah, I think you both bring up really great points. Definitely Jen's definitely touching on, what kind of reputational risks do we put when we make our T-shirts? I think, as members of Phi Sigma Pi, I think we are pretty funny people. I think we're very witty. And I think that's one thing to know is sometimes humor doesn't always transcend across all mediums. And so when we look at, especially today's college campuses, our campuses today are more diverse with so many backgrounds than ever before. And what we say on our T-shirt really says volumes about our organization. And what we may find funny, another person may find offensive. So I think that's one thing that we have to be very careful of. So, if we're on a campus and we have a T-shirt that may come across as offensive to women, or we have a T-shirt that may come across offensive to even people who may not meet our GPA standards, those are things that we really need to take into consideration. You don't know what the background story of every single student on your campus is. So although we want the name to get out, you want the name to be associated with something very positive. You want to be very proud to wear your shirt. And exactly to Amanda's point about the brand that we want to have there is, if we have something offensive message, whether we know that that's offensive or not, when it's linked to Phi Sigma Pi, it's naturally ensued that Phi Sigma Pi that we endorse these type of behaviors, or we endorse this topic, and that's really something we're not about. I think as a national organization, that's something that as brothers we need to make sure we challenge each other on that. So, I want to put that challenge out there to everyone that when we see not only just T-shirts, but if we see posts or things that don't align with what we feel are the values of Phi Sigma Pi, that don't really align with the identity of who we are as brothers, then as brothers we need to hold each other accountable for that. And I think that's something that we can do going forward, and we'll do a great job at. At the same time, too, is we want to also protect your assets, right? So making sure that you use the brand or giving permission where it's due. So we're going to kind of talk about, what does that represent and the marketing. And Jen, maybe you want to expand on this, but when we talk about like Phi Sigma Pi or as our members, how would we define what is our marketing key, or how would you define Phi Sigma Pi?
That's a great question. I think the easiest way to explain the marketing key would be that we are, the quirky student, maybe the student who loves a lot of different things, the student who is an intellectual, who wants to be social, wants to get involved on campus, and wants to be a leader.
Great. Yeah, definitely. I think that's always been one of the struggles is, chapters are like, what is Phi Sigma Pi? It's this nebulous thing, or what does the word honor entail? And I think when we look at Phi Sigma Pi as an organization, if we were a person, I would definitely probably label us we are that smart, funny kid who's very comfortable with who they are. And that's something we've always been proud of. I think as an organization, we are selective by nature. That's something that comes with our order, is that there's a select people, but by no means as an organization have we ever meant to be an elitist or an exclusive organization. So that says something about us. So when we do our marketing materials, that's something we want to put forward, is that we are a welcoming place. We're comfortable who we are, but we also have standards that we're going to hold, and we have expectations of our members. So definitely something to keep in mind. So Jen, let's go do a quick check-in. How are we doing on Twitter?
So we actually have a question that kind of goes along with the marketing key question. Gamma Epsilon chapter asks, can you describe the Phi Sigma Pi brand voice? Pretty similar, but I think you might be able to get another answer out of that too.
Yeah, so I think when we talk about, that's a great question. So it's talking about, what is the Phi Sigma Pi brand voice? I think a lot of times you'll hear that phrase of us being the smart, funny kid who's comfortable. I think it's going to vary by chapter and by campus as well. So I think if you've ever kind of gone to a national event or to a regional conference, when you really start meeting brothers from other chapters or outside your university, you really find that, our strength really is in our diversity. of our members, and that everyone brings something different to the table. And what my weakness is as a person, there's going to be a brother there that has that as a strength that I can count on. So I think that obviously that's a concept that can be a little bit hard to put into an image sometimes, but that's something that we would definitely sell. So for me, it's really about that strength and diversity of our members and being comfortable with who we are, and also being committed to developing our members to be the best people that they can be. I'll open it up if any of the two of you have anything you want to add. I get thumbs up, so that counts as good. Great. So I think a lot of times we talk about, you'll hear people ask like, hey, can you post pictures of your recruitment t-shirts, or I need to come up with a t-shirt or a flyer. I have no idea where to start. So could you all offer maybe some good suggestions on where are some good places to find awesome ideas to make for our t-shirts and flyers and other marketing pieces?
I mentioned earlier that a lot of chapters use Pinterest. Pinterest, social media. I think one of the main ways that I absolutely love is Chapter Talk. It's a great forum for talking with other chapters. It's a great way to make it a marketplace of ideas. And I think the one question I want to pose to both of you was one that a chapter asked me recently and asked another consultant. And that is, what if a chapter wants to use another chapter's design that maybe they saw on Pinterest or saw online? It's out there, it's out on the internet. What do you do?
Well, when it comes to selling any merchandise, it can be tricky. But of course, again, the first thing you have to do is even though their stuff's been posted on the internet, it's always good to ask permission. But even if it's a chapter, they did their own artwork. They didn't have to do any consulting with any firms or anything. It's always good to obtain permission, especially written permission, so in case there's any question, a year down the road. Chris, did you want to add to that any?
No, I think you kind of nailed it on the head. I think it's always important to ask for permission, and it's really important to kind of do your homework too. So you may see a T-shirt that you really find very interesting, but you want to make sure that that T-shirt, one, is in compliance with everything, so we don't want to just simply copy it because if one chapter did it, that doesn't necessarily make it okay for every other chapter to replicate. So one, get the permission, and the second part is doing your homework to make sure where the images, original artwork, or were they copyrighted, and make sure that process was going. Another thing you could do too, it all depends, is if you can reach out to that chapter. Maybe they just have extra T-shirts if you want a small quantity, or they might already have the file saved, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So you can really use each other as brothers as great resources through that. But I think that's something we definitely see a lot too, is you see someone, you're like, hey, great shirt, where did you get that? So work smarter, not harder. But good question.
As Chris said, work smart. Work smarter because it'll save you a lot of hassle and it'll save you a lot of work having to be, in case you do get yourself in trouble. It prevents all that if you work ahead. So sorry, just had to add that.
Yeah, great. I think a lot of times when we talk about, at least for me, sometimes when we get into the copyright branding talk, it can be really intimidating. And I think on the front end, you're like, wow, there's all this work I have to do, or all these hoops I have to jump through. But I think it's definitely a very manageable process, and it's all about using your resources that are available to you. So thinking about that, I think one of the things we're definitely doing is having Amanda and Jen on the panels to provide that resource and provide this roundtable. But Amanda, maybe you can expand a little bit. I know we talked about images and branding, but are there any other things that we should keep in mind from maybe like a legal standpoint, or just an overall design standpoint when we're creating recruitment T-shirts?
Well, it depends. It depends on what you include on your shirt. So, like, if you want to include your university logo, I suggest getting in touch with your Office of Communications and Marketing at your university. They all have one. Or refer to the branding manual. Some of you may have heard that before. university branding manual, which basically shows how you need to, use the logo and all that stuff. And if, to some logos you may see have like a little circle R or a TM next to it. Again, that's a copyright, trademark mark that logos need to have. So it's always good to get permission for them just to make sure. Plus, as I was saying earlier, with merchandise, sometimes some universities have contracts with certain vendors, so therefore they ensure that the product is good quality, and they also ensure that the logos are presented in the correct way. Most vendors who have that contract will know this. So when you see, when you go in a store and you want to buy like a mug or something that has a university logo, and of course you'll see that collegiate sticker on there. It says, the official licensed collegiate product. That's basically saying that vendor knows what they're doing. Well, and basically that they're representing the university in the correct form, plus if they have any scholarship ties, that's given back to the university. So, when they sell a product. So therefore, you want to make sure if you print with the university logo, you're using a approved vendor, which is the person that makes your product, whether it's a mug or a t-shirt. Printing usually doesn't require that because you can go to any printer. But with merchandising, it's better to work with the University of Communications and Marketing. Therefore, everybody's on the same page, everybody's happy, and you're using a good qualified product.
Definitely, and I think the overarching theme I think tonight will be seek permission and really plan. It's not something you can just kind of do on a whim. And I think the one thing I would offer from my experience with higher education is social media is great, but if you're breaking a copyright or using a logo, that is a very easy way for those owners to find out. So a good example would be a university that we have here in my area. A couple years back, a student organization was doing a carnival, and it was kind of like their theme was Batman, because the new Batman movie had just come out. And a big tradition on that campus is every time it snows, students go down the football field, because the football field's in the middle of the campus, and they make anything in there, and they did a Batman symbol, so kind of like what the bat signal would look like, and they use that to try to market the carnival. And so all of a sudden there's this giant football-sized Batman logo. They had a Twitter with that university's name and then _ Batman to it, and all of a sudden the university was receiving cease and desist letters from the distributor of that movie and facing legal actions. And that was a few small students' decision. They thought they were doing some great marketing for their carnival, but that's the thing to keep in mind with social media as well, is that when we're posting those things out there, not only can you see it and your brother see it, but everyone else can see it as well. So definitely good.
And kind of once it's out there, a lot of times there's a very difficult process to try and trace it back to you, especially if it's a original artwork, original anything. We have a question from Beta Omicron's chapter president who asks, what if a brother wants their chapter to use an image from the internet, but they don't know where it came from?
So I'm going to punt that one to Amanda.
Again, if you don't know, honestly, there's like it seems a little doubt in this question already, where it's like, I don't know where the image came from. Again, it's hard to find that trail. So therefore, if you do use it and then someone says, hey, that's my image, what are you going to do? So again, if you don't know where it's coming from, you're pretty much walking a thin line, in my opinion. I just feel you're better protected if you know where your source is, or at least where your inspiration came from.
I can say for me, if a chapter asked me point blank this question, I would probably say err on the side of caution. Don't do it. You guys are creative people. Brothers by nature, you guys have a lot of imagination, a lot of creativity, and there's got to be someone in your chapter who can whip up a recruitment theme or a cool t-shirt idea, and you guys can work together and put it out there that's original and that you guys can take pride in too. So instead of, getting into this risk factor, I would say, if you find yourself in this predicament, I would leave it be if you can't figure out who it's from.
Amanda, in your background, could you give us a little bit of information on, what's kind of the difference between just point blank using an image and being inspired by an image and using something that as an inspiration. I think some brothers may have a question about, you know, what's the difference between using the image or being inspired?
Well, speaking from a design major, like when I went to school and to graduate school, basically we find inspiration where this is getting a little too artsy-fartsy, we would go out and basically find inspiration from nature, from architecture, from benchmarking is a common term that we use. You benchmark other competitors or other logos, fellow competition, fellow organizations that work with that same mission as you. Therefore, you're benchmarking, seeing, and you're kind of analyzing, like, okay, well, what did work here and what didn't work here, and therefore come up with your own solution from the analyzation, of course, considering the client. Now, in these terms, therefore, it's kind of the same way. You want to draw inspiration, like, again, we're going to go back to Harry Potter. It's the only thing I think of right now, thanks to Chris. With Harry Potter, again, if you draw inspiration, whether maybe it's creating artistic elements like the Thunderbolt and something in some other form, again, or drawing your own character. Therefore, again, when you're doing that, just make sure, if you can, try including very, very little print saying all properties, all images property of whatever the film company is at the time. Therefore, and instead of flat out using an image, saying, well, I'm just going to stick the Harry Potter logo across the chest right there. Boom, I'm done. That's basically flat out using their logo. That's it. And even if you alter the logo, like, well, I'm just going to adjust the little Thunderbolt to go this way, that's still altering a copyright work. And therefore, maybe if you create your own font that maybe uses the inspiration from the Thunderbolt, I keep calling it Thunderbolt, I'm sorry, the star from the forehead. Again, creating inspiration from that and not using it flat out or altering someone else's original artwork. That kind of clear it up some?
So just to kind of clarify, you can't just take an image and flip it and reverse it or tilt it to the side and call it your own.
Correct, because if you start looking at some branding guidelines, especially for universities, for example, you'll have that where, like, you cannot have the logo like this, and then have a big red X through it. So that's, again, usually there's some sort of brand where you can't alter the logo, where it's, like you said, flipping it, reversing it, turning it upside down, crooked, whatever you may please.
Awesome. The same with even down to colors. It's crazy. Even the fraternity, we have a specific purple, specific gold, and every university, lots of different companies, organizations, it gets down even to the little minute details. What might seem minute to you guys is not minute to a company or to a brand. So be mindful of that.
Yes, definitely. I think, when we look at images, is to remember, someone spent a lot of time and effort putting that together, and so sometimes it does seem nitpicky when we're like, it's a certain color shade of purple that we use, or, this is the Phi Sigma Pi gold, but it's really powerful as an organization if we use consistent imaging, that there's that brand that, you can go anywhere, and you're like, when you see it, you're like, oh, that's Phi Sigma Pi. That's something that belongs to that group. And that's, ultimately the purpose of the branding that we want, is that, you can go to any campus where we have a chapter, and if you see a certain logo, you're like, bam, I know that there's a chapter here, or I know that there's a group. So definitely. And I think the overarching theme is, by no means are we trying to, restrict you. We definitely want you to be creative, and Jen kind of hit that on the head, is we are a bunch of very creative, resourceful fools, and you're shortchanging yourself and your chapter if we're just kind of like taking the easy way out of copying and pasting. So it's a great way to challenge yourself. It's a great way to challenge the chapter, and it does require a lot of work and require a lot of planning. But I think that's kind of like the challenge of a member of Phi Sigma Pi. That's something that we look forward to doing. It's kind of like trying to do that impossible feat that people might shy away from.
And adding on to that,
sorry, Amanda, go for it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Adding on to what Chris is saying, therefore, you got to own this. So if you create your own artwork, your own typeface, whatever these T-shirts, that's your chapter. That's kind of your brand. And you're like, hey, 10 years down the road, this T-shirt's still being worn. Like, I created that. Our chapter did that. So there's a sense of ownership, which in the way a copyright acts the same way. When these artists get copyrighted with their own logos and movie companies and branding firms, that's someone's life work. And so that's why they need to be represented correctly, just like Phi Sigma Phi does. So therefore, when you create something on your own, it's really kind of cool, like, hey, my chapter did that. You know, therefore you can own your artwork.
Chris, we have a question.
Okay.
So, what is the best or most interesting Phi Sigma Pi marketing campaign you've seen from a chapter, and what made it successful? Oh yeah.
Wow. That's an awesome question. I think I've seen a lot. I think the big change that I think I've seen over the recent years is the use of themes. I think when I was an undergrad, that wasn't very common to say we're going to do a recruitment theme. So I think some interesting ones I've seen. America. Everyone loves America, right? Like, that's an easy sell. Like, do you love America? Who's going to say no? So it's a great. I've seen some good ones. That one. I saw a recent chapter that's kind of using candy. So they're kind of talking like the sweet life of Phi Sigma Pi. So that one was pretty neat. So there's been a lot, but I think the ones I've seen that are really successful, I don't think there's one that says like if you do this theme or if you pick this idea, you're guaranteed to have success. So I think overall the really successful ones I've seen are chapters who are just really authentic to who they are, and they come out from the gate saying like, this is who we are as a chapter, and this is who we are as an organization, and that can be anywhere from like the events that they hold during recruitment, or just even, although not a marketing piece per se, but it's how they talk to people on their campus and how they treat each other. That speaks volumes. So regardless of the theme, I think the ones that are the most successful are the ones that are really authentic to themselves.
I gotta say that I'm going to do a shameless plug here that our communications team is going to absolutely freaking love me for. But I kind of like ours because it's neat and it's nifty and it's pretty free and it says everything about us. Join the real social network. We are social. Fellowship is the keystone of our fraternity. And the cool part about this is that I've seen it, a couple chapters really take it and use it as their own. I really like the theme of the tripod when they make a tripod recruitment. So you're actually showcasing what your fraternity is. It's very particular to us. We have a lot of chapters that do it really well, but I just had to do that because I saw it sitting here and I was like, yeah, that's kind of my favorite marketing campaign, just because I think it's a perfect opportunity for you guys to kind of relate on a good level with your peers and the students on your campus. Join us. We're social. We'll get you involved. We'll give you an opportunity for leadership. And drop mic and rant.
It's always good to know too that those are free resources, right? So maybe your chapter budget doesn't have a whole lot of wiggle room. You can contact the headquarters and get those resources absolutely free.
And I promise nobody asked me to do that. That's my honest answer, that I love the campaign.
Hey, Jen, can you hold up that example again? People can see that on their screen. See how, I'm using it as an example. This is a great example. See, there's that, again, a sense like social network. You kind of get that it's Facebook, but it's not really Facebook. That's an example where they're avoiding and kind of representing the social network, but using, kind of a Facebook feel and the social network feel with Twitter and all that, but they're not using any logos. So that's a great example of how they use the inspiration from logos and brandings, but staying away from using it directly.
Awesome. So do we have any other questions out there in the Twitterverse?
We do. We have one more that I have gotten so far, which is, I designed a shirt, but now I want to sell it. What should I do? Kind of similar to what we talked about before, but if you guys have anything else to add on this, in the process of going from finding something to selling, if there's like a simple, what should you do?
Amanda, do you want to give some advice regarding that?
Well, I don't want to get too technical and of course bore everybody to death. It depends like what's on the shirt. So if it's like an original creation, it depends. Each university is different when it comes to like with how they feel about chapters, organizations selling their own merchandise, even if it doesn't use the logo. Since the chapter's still representing the university. So, and also, therefore, you get into the price point. So that it's kind of hard to answer that one because I don't know much of the context in the back, and I haven't seen the shirt. So, it's always good to. It depends on how you're going to sell it. If you're going to just sell it from the chapter, you might want to consult with a lawyer just in case to make sure you're not infringing on any other property rights and that and so forth. They usually, I just worked with one recently on something I just created actually for my thesis project, and they pretty much give you, if they're nice enough, depending on who you get, they can give you like, okay, just do this and this and you're done. It's a free, 5-minute, advice. But again, it depends on the context. Chris, I don't know how Phi Sigma Pi feels about their chapters selling their T-shirts, if they have any legalities with that, because usually there is a long list.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the national standpoint, we kind of follow what the national constitution is going to say. So we're really looking at that mark and making sure that it doesn't conflict, with the overall purpose and values of the organization that we're going to look at. But I always say, if you're planning on definitely selling the shirt and making profit, it goes back to plan, right, and ask for permission. Use resources on your campus. I think that would be a good one. Is your campus, whether it's individual colleges or offices for like advancement and development, web communications, there's people on your campus that do this thing day in and day out. And if you want to make a great connection on your campus, this is a great way to do it, of saying like, hey, we're a student org, we want to make this T-shirt, like, can you give us some advice? And they'll be able to kind of walk you through that. And you never know, just kind of like branching out there, you might have a conversation with that person. Maybe they would be a great honorary brother down the road. Maybe they would be a good faculty staff advisor down the road. Maybe that they'll just be there to give you advice. So, not only just with this idea, but anything your chapter is doing is using those resources that come up. I know one of the questions we've heard is, if you love like our national logos, or if you love the marketing campaigns that come out and you want those T-shirts, you want to put that logo on a T-shirt or anything, just reach out to the national headquarters. You guys have staff that love to talk to you, and they love to help you. And you can reach out to council as well. As members of council, most likely we're going to refer you back to the staff, so that way they can get you where you need to go properly. But definitely, we're all about that, is that we want to be that resource. So if you see something that we make that you like, let us know, and we'll start having that conversation. I can't always guarantee that you'll get what you want, but we're definitely willing to have that conversation and try. So a lot of love to all the former T-shirt chairs out there tonight. So awesome. So I know we're getting ready to hit that 45-minute mark, so we're getting ready to wrap up. So we'll do like a last call for questions. If you have any questions you want to submit, either on the Google Plus Hangout or Twitter, go ahead and get those in on the hashtag PSP Roundtable. So before we hit the last round of questions from Twitter, the last round is maybe, Jen, if you want to take this one, is talk about a little bit more about, what are some ways that our national staff and council, what are some ways that we can help the chapters?
Well, I have mentioned the wonderful recruitment campaign that we have, and you can actually utilize that through the website. If you go to phisigmapi.org/recruitment, that is an automatic place for you guys to find all of the recruitment, resources, materials you guys could possibly need. The other thing you can do is go to phisigmapi.org/resources. This is a great resource, excuse me, I can't talk tonight, it's too late, resource page where you guys can find a whole bunch of different things. And if you need to work with a company who first needs to get permission, as I spoke about earlier for our image, all you have to do is reach out to our wonderful office manager, Lori, at pspoffice@phi-sigma-pi.org. Or just email me or one of your other consultants at your chapters. This is our full-time job. Everybody on staff, this is our day-to-day. We're here for you, as is council, as are your alumni, your faculty advisors, and as Chris said, use your resources because you have a lot of them as brothers of Phi Sigma Pi.
Yes, so definitely. So just remember, it's phi-sigma-pi.org/resources that you can go in there and get that. You can email us at pspoffice@phi-sigma-pi and get connected to us. Your consultant information is online. All of council's information is online. So if you found this roundtable interesting, or the topic, or maybe if you have an idea for a future roundtable on a topic that you want to know about, or conversations in your chapter, definitely email that to us. We want to hear about it. We want to make sure that we're reaching you and meeting you where you are and helping out. So it's great. So we'll go back to Twitter one last time to see if there was any final questions come up before we do some closing thoughts and call it a night.
I think we're good, Chris.
Awesome. So we'll kind of do some closing thoughts. I'll kind of open up to Jen and then Amanda just to see if there's anything that you guys want to share before we close for the night.
I think my biggest thing is just ask. Ask me, ask. I mean, I know it sounds like we're harping resources, but if you're ever in doubt, that's why we're here. We're not going to yell at you for having an idea. Actually, we'll do quite the opposite, and I'll probably praise you and give you major kudos, as will anybody on council, staff, etc. But I think asking is really the first step, because all of the steps that we've talked about tonight, everything else that we've discussed here, it really starts with that question. And you guys have to reach out to us and reach out to your university to start that conversation. But use your imagination, guys. Use your creativity and do your research, because it shows. We have a lot of great chapters who are doing a lot of great things, and it's awesome to see.
Yeah, like Jim was saying, it's always great to ask ahead, and therefore you're avoiding any conflict in the end. So there, plus, like the Office of Marketing at your university or whatever, will love you for it. So therefore, you're on the same page as well, and they're on your side. They're willing to help you. That's what they're there for. So, like she said, ask from the beginning, and therefore you're all good, all clear.
And my overarching piece is really stay true to yourself and be authentic and really work towards that. And when we're making these designs, really challenge yourself to say, like, how does this reflect on Phi Sigma Pi? How does this reflect on me as a student of my university committee and my community? I think that's something that we want to challenge each other on, is that we're representing this organization. It's an organization that we all love, and we're very, very passionate about it. So we want to make sure we're channeling that passion in a great way. So, like Jen said, our chapters are doing some amazing things out there, and the biggest thing is just staying true and being authentic to the values that our organization's given you. And then the second piece I would think about too is, you're not doing it alone. So I know that can feel very overwhelming that we're talking about, like, ask for permission and talk to people, but you have a whole T-shirt committee, basically, of resources that you can reach out to at the national office or your alumni or council. So we are officially appointed ex officio members of your T-shirt committee now. So we're willing to help you and get you appointed. Use your university resources, and you'll be successful. And yeah, it may take an extra 5 to 15 minutes to reach out, but it's definitely worth it, and it will save you the 5 hours minimum heartache that you have to deal with on the back end. So I wanted to thank Jen and Amanda one last time for giving up their time this evening to join us. Like I said, if you want to keep the conversation going, you can do so on Twitter at #PSPRoundtable. You can also find a recording of this on our YouTube page. I would give it at least until tomorrow, so that way if there's any edits or anything we want to do to make it pretty, we'll put it on there for you. But you can go to our YouTube page, get that, and then you can share it with chapter members if you'd like. Don't forget that not only this roundtable, but all of our roundtables are out there. So we've had some alumni engagement roundtables, we've had a recruitment planning roundtable, we've had some that have talked about National Hazing Prevention Week. So there's some resources there, just like here on our YouTube channel. So definitely check it out. So again, thanks Jen, thanks Amanda. It was good seeing you all. For our brothers in the Northeast, stay warm and safe, and we look forward to talking to everyone on Twitter and at the next roundtable.